just when I think that the world around me has reached a new height of a fever pitch that it cannot top, it seems like the next week somehow finds a way to top it with its sense of fever pitch, grabbing for your attention, a sense of urgency. I think we're in the third consecutive presidential election that is the headlines will continue to call the most important election of our lifetimes. Will it only ever keep going up in that direction? In 2007, my own life reached a fever pitch, and one that I had to break away from. At the time, this place kept coming up. A friend had gone there, it came up in a reading in a class, it came up in another class discussion, and I realized I had a year's worth of AP credit I could cash in on, and so I ran away from college for a semester and landed at the Thésée community, an ecumenical monastery in the east of France. Often if people know Thésée, they know the chants that came from there. Short melodic chants you sing over and over and over prayerfully. And the services of the monastery are several of those chants, a reading, a psalm, some prayers, some chants, and then in the middle of it, 10 minutes of silence. And then more singing, a couple more prayers, and you go off and have breakfast. First week I was at Thésée, there were 300 people visiting along with me. The second week I was at Thésée, there were 3,000 people visiting. Imagine 3,000 people getting together to just sing, sit in silence, and sing, and go eat together. There's really nothing else quite like it. So in 2021, if we can remember what the fever pitch felt like then, which feels like 10 years ago, but apparently it was 3, I was craving some silence. I pitched an idea to a faculty member in the music school of bringing in guest artists who would kind of form the moment around the silence. And we started a program that, because I'm terrible at naming things, I ended up calling Sound and Silence, because those are the two things we do. There's sound and there's silence. Yeah. And then in an unexpected move became the most successful thing I've done as a campus minister so far. It was not the free suppers with very good food. It was not the concerts. It wasn't Bible study, which I'm baffled by. I love Bible study. But the thing that I have got that 18 to 24-year-olds have been showing up for the most has been silence. I hated to do that beforehand. You guys asked this morning to come and talk about what's going on at Canterbury House. I felt like it would be a little hypocritical to just talk for 10 minutes about silence because words are kind of counter to the whole project at hand. So I appreciate y'all. Since I've been here a few times, I felt like I could experiment with trying to give a taste of the experience. But again, I knew you were a captive audience, so that's why I tried to give a bit of a heads up. Feel free over coffee hour to let me know how it landed. Also, I have the timer going. The silence count is part of the sermon, so we are going to still keep this within standard sermon length, I promise. Clock's going right there. So, every week during the academic year, we get together. About half the time, we have a guest artist come in, and we've had a modular synthesizer set, a solo jazz saxophonist, a chamber sextet that one student, he came to the first one we ever did and came up to me afterwards and said, I would love to compose something for this. And he was our last guest artist that year. 2 students said, what if we combine art with this? So twice a semester we fill the walls of Canterbury House with art made by students that offers a sort of visual meditation. And those are the most attended nights of Sound and Silence, are when those 2 students bring in the art. It's been a really enriching, incredibly selfishly, which is also how it started, because I just needed some silence and wanted to see who else might be interested. The music professor loved it, and we just went off to the races to see what might happen. What's been so enriching for me have been a lot of the surprise lessons that not only am I learning, but I'm learning alongside and from a lot of the students who are coming too. Learned a lot about subtlety. It's a thing I learned from Taizé too. It's like which chant drops you off into the silence can really make a difference for how you experience that moment. I've learned some of that by not subtlety. Kind of informed how I did this morning too. Because I had two guest artists. When they ended their piece of the music, they had not really understood the assignment, and they went, "Okay, we will now have 5 minutes of contemplative silence," and then just quiet after that. Had to learn the importance of subtlety. Got to learn how the Spirit shows up. Because before spring break this past year, on the nights we don't have a guest artist, the student musicians bring their instruments, and we have there's just an open improv, so students are riffing off of each other. And as the last musician dropped out, someone had been humming, and then more people joined that hum, and more, and then people started playing with chords, and it broke out into just wordless open-mouth singing that then crested and then dropped off back into a hum until just one person was left humming, and that dropped us off into silence. And there were people crying. I was sitting there. Most of the people here aren't Christian or church types at all. And I'm sitting here like, this was literally Pentecostal. Like, this would happen in a Pentecostal church. Do y'all know? There actually was someone there who turned out to have been in a Pentecostal church. I had an intern, so she had been there in the 90s. And she went, "I haven't heard singing like that since this moment in that Pentecostal church. And it was the most beautiful thing I ever heard. It was the same music tonight." Also learning, we talk about this with the students a lot, that you can't force that moment. You can't force that moment when the Spirit shows up. The whole point of practice, the whole point of returning to the discipline is to simply create the conditions where the Spirit might show up and just get to drink it in when she does. But you can't make it happen. What's interesting is how, and it's the reason we kept on with it, because not many people came the first year, and it was just me and the music professor. We were each just writing a check to throw in to pay for the guest artist that whole first year. And but the reason that we went, okay, we need to tinker, but this is worth pursuing, was how excited the musicians were, because they got something about it. I learned ways of how to share some of the riches of our tradition with people who had never walked through the doors of a church. And a lot of the students I'm working with, they're not going to leave their time at Canterbury House and know how to recite a creed. Some of them might not even pick up what a creed is. But they would probably have a conversation with an experienced monk more than a lot of Christians I know who go to church every Sunday morning. It's been really interesting to see a very different way, because silence is something that anyone can bring their perspective and their practice to. Whether you're using it for contemplative prayer, or to pray a rosary, or you have a mindfulness practice, or the week has just been so much and you just need to let your brain just kind of run wild for a little bit just to let the thoughts settle out. I'm not sure it's replicable. I'm not sure that I would say, hey, look, everyone, the magic key to getting young people to show up is just sit in silence. I'm not sure that would work. It's a bit of an odd thing, and some people, like I said, would rather run for the hills than do it. Actually, when I was hiking the Appalachian Trail right before I got hired at Canterbury House, and an interesting thing is, per capita, people over the age of 50 have a higher rate of successfully finishing the trail because they're better at being alone with their thoughts than the 20-something who's in shape but cannot hack being out in the woods alone with your thoughts for that long. Which is also why it's interesting. I found a whole bunch of young people who I think are all very into that. I think the charge for us, though, some of what I'm learning, some of what I'm thinking about, is why this space is craved so much, which has me thinking about that fever pitch of the world. Because something about silence, something about taking a moment that says, I don't have to listen to the fever pitch or whatever's yelling for my attention right now. I don't have to. I can take this moment. I can take this breath. This breath is enough. I'm enough. Without trying to produce, and I'm in a very competitive university, trying to get the grades and the internship and the job and the salary and all of the things that continue to clamor for oxygen, and we're already back to the fever pitch. Those of us who are older, we built that world with that fever pitch. And we live in it too, but also I can say that young folks are buckling under it. And the only way out is to learn how to unmake it together. But when we do, when we figure out how to make that space for ourselves, and when we learn how to make that space for one another, to know that this moment is enough, that you're enough, you don't have to be yanked along by the fever pitch. You don't have to be contributing to it constantly. You can make it for one another, to show one another we're enough. That we can be loved in whatever that is we're bringing to it. When we build that world for other people, when we build that world for others in our own community, we'll also be building it for ourselves. When we build a world where there's more space to be and not do and do and do, or take in and take in and take in, we ourselves get to live in a world where we're reminded from one of the messages I will take as part of what the men from heaven Jesus brings. That we're loved by God as we are. And God declares us enough as we are.